I still remember the exact second the afternoon cracked open, because Jax has told me the story so many times that I can close my eyes and see it like I was riding pillion behind him. It was a Thursday in late July, and the sticky heat made the air feel thick enough to chew. Maple Lane lay quiet under the sun, with no kids chasing each other through sprinklers and no dogs barking at shadows, just the low drone of window unit air conditioners and the occasional creak of a screen door. Then the Harleys came, four of them rolling slow and deliberate, their engines rumbling like distant thunder that had decided to park itself right in the middle of suburbia. Chrome flashed in the light, and the patches on their backs caught the glare. Skulls ringed in fire that looked almost playful until you remembered the stories stitched into the leather. I wasn't there that day, but I heard it first from Jax over a beer at the clubhouse, then from Toro the next morning while he nursed black coffee at the diner, and finally from Brick in the garage as he bled the brakes on his old shovelhead. Each telling added a new layer and a sharper edge, until the whole thing felt carved in stone. This is the version that stuck with me, the one that still raises goosebumps every time I cruise past that little blue house on the corner and see the bike chained to the porch rail. The bikes came to a stop in perfect formation, with engines ticking down as the heat rose off the pipes. Jax, whose patch read Ghost, in thread gone soft from too many washes, killed his motor first. And the others followed without a signal, the way they'd done 1,000 times on runs that ended in campfires or courthouse steps. Boots hit the pavement with a heavy, final thud, and curtains twitched in windows up and down the block. Mrs. Delgado, who'd lived across the street since before the subdivision had a name, actually stepped onto her porch with her phone already glowing in her hand, her thumb hovering over 911. And then the voice cut through everything, small, trembling, and impossible to ignore. "Sir, please buy my bike." She was maybe 7 years old, standing on the curb like she'd been planted there by the universe itself, with pigtails sticking out at wild angles from crooked elastics, and a purple dress, faded from too many washes, hanging loose on a frame that hadn't seen enough meals lately. The sneakers on her feet were held together with silver duct tape that caught the light every time she shifted her weight, and a sky blue bicycle leaned against her hip, its streamers fluttering from the handlebars, while a white basket up front sported a cracked daisy sticker that had probably been there since she was 4. In her hands, she clutched a piece of cardboard ripped from the side of a cereal box, where crayon letters marched across it in uneven rows, "For sale $20. Jax dismounted with the kind of slow grace that comes from years of knowing exactly how much space his body takes up, and the others, Brick, Toro, Diesel, hung back a respectful step, though their eyes never left the kid. Jax crouched, leather creaking, until he was eye level with her, and up close he could see the grime under her fingernails along with the raw spot on her lower lip where worry had worn a permanent groove. "Hey, sweetheart," he said, and the gentleness in his voice would have shocked anyone who'd only ever heard him give orders across a pool table. "What's going on here?" She swallowed hard enough that he saw her throat work, and then she answered, "Mom, hasn't eaten since Tuesday. I thought maybe someone would want my bike." Tuesday, it was Thursday, and the words settled between them like dust after an explosion. Jax's gaze drifted past her shoulder to 30 yards down the sidewalk, where on the sagging front porch of a house that had once been white, a woman sat hunched on the top step with a threadbare blanket wrapped tight around her shoulders despite the 90-degree heat. She was thin, dangerously thin, and her hair hung in greasy strings that hadn't seen a brush in days, while her eyes stared at the cracked concrete like it might open up and offer answers. Beside her sat a single plastic grocery bag, the kind you get for 5 cents at the register, and it held 1 can of off-brand beans and nothing else. Jax knew that look intimately because he'd worn it himself after the steel mill closed in '09 when the foreclosure notice came, and when his own son stopped asking for second helpings and started asking if they could sleep in the truck to save on the electric bill. The girl, Lila, she whispered her name, kept talking now that the floodgates had opened. Mom cleaned offices at night for Mr. Carver. He owns the strip malls, the ones with the nail salon and the vape shop and the laundromat that still takes quarters. When the new management company took over, they said anyone without a college degree was non-essential. Mom begged him. Just 2 more weeks, she said. Rent was due, and I had this fever that wouldn't break. But Mr. Carver laughed, told her the budget didn't have room for sentimental hires. Brick made a low sound in his throat, the kind that usually preceded someone eating pavement, while Toro cracked his knuckles one by one. And Diesel just stared at the porch, memorizing the woman's face the way he memorized license plates on long hauls. Lila's fingers tightened on the cardboard until it started to crumple, and she added, "So I took my bike. It's the only thing that's really mine. Mom says pride's a luxury we can't afford right now." Something twisted hard in Jax's chest, sharp and familiar and dangerous, and he reached into the inside pocket of his vest, pulled out his battered wallet, and peeled off 3 20s. He folded them small and pressed them into Lila's fist, where her fingers were ice cold despite the heat. "The bike stays with you, kid," he said quietly. "This is for groceries. We'll be back." He stood, and the others were already moving, swinging legs over seats with the fluid synchronicity of men who'd ridden together through storms and worse, while engines fired in sequence, low, mean, and purposeful. They didn't ride far. Carver Holdings sat downtown in a tower of glass and steel that reflected the sky like it was trying to pretend it belonged there, and the lobby smelled of lemon polish and money. The receptionist reached for the phone the second 4 bikers walked through the revolving door, but Brick's stare, flat and unblinking, froze her hand halfway. They didn't ask for directions. Jax led them straight to the elevator, punched the button for the top floor, and rode up in silence while Muzak tried and failed to soothe the tension crackling between them. The corner office had a mahogany door and a brass nameplate, MR, Elliot Carver, CEO. Inside, Carver was on a call with his feet propped on the desk, laughing about weekend tea times and quarterly bonuses, but he looked up mid-sentence and the laugh died in his throat. "Gentlemen," he said, swinging his feet down with practiced nonchalance, "I believe you're in the wrong building." Jax didn't answer. He crossed the plush carpet and set Lila's cardboard sign in the center of the desk like he was laying down evidence in court with the crayon letters facing Carver Square on. "For sale, $20. Recognize the handwriting?" Jax asked, his voice calm as a frozen lake. Carver's eyes flicked from the sign to the 4 men crowding his office, and his smirk, the kind that closed deals and crushed dreams in boardrooms, wobbled at the edges. "I don't have time for performance art," he said. "You've got all the time in the world," Toro replied, leaning against the doorframe with his arms crossed. "We're not leaving until you hear the whole story." Jax didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to, and he laid it out plain and relentless. Lila on the curb with her wobbly sign, Sarah on the porch wrapped in a blanket that did nothing to hide how hunger had hollowed her out, the single can of beans, the fever, and the laughter echoing in this very office when a mother begged for 2 more weeks. Every word landed like a hammer on glass. Carver tried the script: market forces, necessary restructuring, tough, but essential decisions. His voice shrank with each syllable until it was barely a whisper. Diesel stepped forward. He was the quiet one, 6'4", and built like a freight train, with a voice like gravel dragged across asphalt, and said, "My sister cleaned offices too. Lost her contract when the vendor switched. She didn't have a kid to feed, but she had pills to quiet the noise in her head. Overdosed last Christmas. So maybe skip the slide deck." The room went still, and even the air conditioning seemed to hold its breath. Brick spoke next, and it surprised everyone because Brick rarely strung more than 5 words together. He'd lost most of his front teeth in a bar fight back in '02 and hated the whistle when he talked. But now the words came steady. "That little girl's bike is worth more than your watch, your car, your corner office, because it's the last thing she had left to give. And you took everything else." Carver's face cycled through shades. Anger red, fear white, anger red again, and he reached for his desk phone. "I'm calling security." Go ahead, Jax said. We'll wait in the lobby. Tell them about the 7-year-old selling her childhood for a loaf of bread while you tee off at the country club. Carver's hand hovered, then dropped like it had been burned. They didn't lay a finger on him. They didn't need to, and they left the sign on his desk and walked out, while the receptionist didn't try to stop them this time. By nightfall, the story was everywhere, not the sanitized version, but the raw one. Group texts lit up, neighborhood apps blew up, someone posted a grainy photo of the bikers leaving Carver Holdings with boots echoing off marble, and someone else shared a picture of Lila's bike. Streamers and all, hashtags started trending locally. Hashtag Blue Bike Girl, hashtag Carver Cares. The irony thick enough to spread on toast. Then the donations started. First, it was a pizza delivered to the little white house. Extra cheese, pepperoni, no note. Then a brown paper bag appeared on the porch with milk, eggs, bread, and peanut butter. The cashier at the corner market told Sarah her tab was paid through the end of the month and slipped her a gift card from a friend. By Sunday, the local food bank had so many canned goods they had to rent a second trailer to store it all. And a GoFundMe popped up, started by an anonymous writer, and hit 10 grand before the sun went down. Monday morning, Carver Holdings posted new job listings. Night shift cleaners, full benefits, no degree required, with starting pay $3 an hour higher than before, and word around town was Carver himself had signed off on the budget line at 2:17 a.m. Jax, and the guys didn't wait for thank yous. They rolled back to Maple Lane just after dusk on Friday. Engines throttled low so the rumble wouldn't wake the block. Lila was on the porch swing with her legs kicking, a cherry popsicle dripping red down her wrist, while Sarah stood in the doorway with her arms loose at her sides for the first time in weeks, her eyes still tired but alive in a way that made Jax's chest ache. Lila spotted them first, dropped the popsicle stick and all, and bolted down the steps, shouting, "Mr. Ghost!" Jax caught her midair, and she smelled like grape soda and summer grass, and the kind of hope that hasn't been crushed yet. "Hey, Trouble," he said. Sarah descended the steps slowly, like she was testing whether the ground would hold, and in the yellow porch light Jax saw the changes. Cheeks a little fuller, lips no longer cracked, a paper grocery bag, clutched in one hand like it might sprout wings and fly away. "They delivered 3 bags, she said, her voice cracking on the edges. Said it was from someone who'd been hungry once. There was a note, told me to keep the bike." Jax set Lila down gently and replied, "Told you we'd be back." Lila tugged his sleeve and asked, "Mom says I can keep the money too. Is that really okay?" He crouched again, eye level, and told her, "More than okay. That bike's going to carry you a lot farther than $20 ever could." They ate on the porch that night, peanut butter sandwiches on soft Wonder Bread, apples sliced paper thin. So Lila could have the biggest pieces, store-brand root beer cracked open like it was the good stuff. Diesel spun a story about how the streamers on her handlebars made the bike aerodynamic, faster than my panhead on the straightaway, while Brick pretended the crusts were too tough for his old teeth and slid them onto Lila's plate when she wasn't looking. Toro taught her to rev an imaginary throttle, vroom vroom, until she giggled so hard she got the hiccups and had to be thumped gently between the shoulder blades. Sarah watched it all with something close to wonder, like she'd forgotten people could laugh without owing someone for it. And when the stars came out and the mosquitoes started their evening patrol, she caught Jax's arm as he stood to leave. "Why?" she asked simply. "Why do this for strangers?" He glanced at Lila, already half asleep against her mom's shoulder with the bike parked proud beside the steps like a blue sentinel, and answered, "Because somebody should have done it for me once. And nobody did." The engines coughed to life, softer this time and almost respectful, and as they rolled away with the porch light glowing warm behind them, Jax caught his reflection in a side mirror, leather, scars, and something new in his eyes he hadn't seen in years. Hope looks good on a ghost. But stories like this don't tie themselves up with a bow and call it done. They keep growing the way roots push through concrete. 3 weeks later, I was at the diner grabbing coffee, when Jax slid into the booth across from me, looking different, shoulders looser, the permanent crease between his brows a little shallower. Kids learning to ride without training wheels, he said without preamble. Took 2 spills in the driveway. Got up both times without crying. Her mom's back on nights. Same company, new crew chief, who actually shows up on time. Benefits kicked in last week. Dental and everything. I raised an eyebrow and asked, "You keeping tabs now?" He snorted and said, "Nah, Lila waves every time we ride past." Started calling us her motorcycle uncles. Sarah invited the whole crew to her birthday next month. Says she's making lasagna from scratch. I laughed so hard the waitress refilled my mug without asking. The real shift came in October, when Carver Holdings announced a new scholarship program, full ride to trade school or community college for dependents of hourly employees. The first recipient was Lila's older cousin, who'd been crashing on friends' couches since his own mom got sick, and the press release quoted Carver. Sometimes it takes a wake-up call to remember why we work. Jax read it aloud in the garage that night with his voice flat as a busted speedometer. While Brick spat into a rag, Toro just shook his head slow, and Diesel summed it up for all of them. Man's trying to buy a conscience off the clearance rack. Too bad, he already hawked the original. They didn't go back to the glass tower. They didn't need to, and the gears were turning now, slow and grinding, but turning. And Lila, she still rides that sky blue bike every afternoon when the heat breaks, with the streamers worn out and replaced by a tiny skull patch Toro stitched on the seat with dental floss and stubbornness. She waves at every Harley that passes, whether she knows the rider or not. And some wave back, while others don't, but the ones who do ride a little slower down Maple Lane, just in case. Because sometimes the loudest sound in the world isn't a straight pipe exhaust. It's a 7-year-old on the curb asking a stranger to buy her bike, so her mom can eat. And sometimes the answer isn't cash or charity. It's a promise kept.